Hey cross-stitching enthusiasts, welcome back to Crafting 101. Today we're going to go over something super important that can level up your cross-stitching. That is gridding your fabric. Whether you're a seasoned pro or you're just starting out, gridding your fabric can really help step up your cross-stitching game. I am your stitching sensei. Let's embark on this journey together. First up, we've got water-soluble pens. These magical markers let you draw on your fabric, and the marks disappear with just a bit of warm water. It's like a disappearing act, the Houdini of techniques. Just be sure to test it on a scrap piece first, so you don't accidentally turn your fabric into an abstract masterpiece. It's like magic. Presto changeo! See, that kind of goes in with Houdini. So, the most important thing to remember when using water-soluble pens: count twice, mark once. It's suggested to use the center of the fabric when starting your grid, but you can use whatever is comfortable for you. And using a ruler to keep the line straight, write over the holes on the fabric with the pen. If you don't want full grid lines all the way across your project, you can just mark a small dot or an X over the intersections, if that's preferable. After you draw your first line, count 10 columns over to the left or the right, then create the next line. Keep doing this until you have a full grid as far as you need to go. Once you're finished with the columns, it's time to start on the rows. If it's easier to rotate your fabric to a more comfortable position, go ahead and do that. Start again in the center, or whatever's most comfortable for you, and repeat by adding a grid line every 10 rows. Water-soluble pens are a quick and inexpensive way to grid your fabric. Just keep in mind that if you do keep the pen on for a prolonged period of time, it may be a little bit more difficult to wash out. For our next trick, we're going to use Easy Count Guideline. You can also use a brightly colored fishing line, just make sure it's under an 8-pound weight. You want a nice thin wire. All you have to do is unspool some of that thread and weave it into your fabric. The beauty of this method is that it won't interfere with your stitches and you won't have to deal with any disappearing ink mishaps. It's like stitching in stealth mode. In this video, we'll be starting at the top inside corner. From here, we'll count 4 holes down and pull our guideline from the front to the back. Next, count 6 holes down, and this time we'll be pulling the guideline from the back to the front. Continue this pattern until you reach the other end of your border. That's 4 stitches on top and 6 underneath. Unspool more line as needed to continue gridding. Without cutting the wire, count 10 to your next column and continue the pattern. Remember, 4 on top, 6 underneath. Continue until the end of your fabric until all of your columns are complete. Now is where we're going to cut our wire and carefully tie a firm knot on both ends. You may need the triple knot though, as this stuff is pretty slippery. Next, go ahead and turn your fabric to whatever position is most comfortable for you. We'll start gridding the rows now. When gridding the rows, the wire on top should cover the 4 from each column. This will create perfect little plus signs as you go across your fabric. Remember, 4 on top, 6 underneath. Once you're done, the grid will form little blocks of 10. If you count from the center of each plus, there should be 10 holes. Once your grid is complete, go ahead and start stitching. If you're using a hoop or a frame, just be careful moving it around. You don't want to tug on the wire and accidentally form larger holes in your fabric. If this does happen, the holes will shrink back after washing and ironing. Once you're ready to remove your guideline, go ahead and cut off the knots from the ends of your wire. Gently pull the guideline and it should slide right out of your fabric. If your guideline gets stuck anywhere, carefully cut it out of your fabric without accidentally cutting your stitches. Nobody wants that to happen. If you're in a hurry or looking for something more cost-effective, try the traditional thread method. All you need is your favorite colored thread. This is also a good time to use any long orts that you may have laying around. It might feel like you're stitching a rainbow, but trust me, it's worth it. Plus, you can always pretend you're the Bob Ross of cross-stitch. Happy little stitches everywhere. Stitching this grid is very similar to the guideline. Start in your preferred corner, stitch from top to bottom, skip 1 hole, then stitch up through the second hole. Count over 8 holes, then stitch back down. Repeat under 2, over 8 until you reach your desired length. At the end of each column or row, be sure to snip the threads so it'll be easier to remove later. While stitching your project, make sure you're stitching under the threaded grid and be careful not to pierce it, otherwise it'll be difficult to remove the thread when you're finished. And there you have it, 3 fantastic ways to grid your fabric. Give each one a try and figure out which works best for you. Remember, cross-stitching is not just a craft, it's an adventure. So go forth, my stitching warriors, and conquer that grid!